I'm here with Glover Nursery. In lieu of our in-person class, with just how warm this March is, we decided we're just getting too busy here to invite people over to do classes. So we're going to do it here online right now for you in your own home. So we are going to be talking about herbicides, but actually more specifically weed control, which does cover herbicides, but mostly we're going to talk about general weed control. So the first question you might ask me, what is a weed? A weed is anything that is a plant where you don't want it, okay? Now, there are some that are maybe more noxious, some the ones that outcompete other plants, okay? So a common one, dandelions, they grow really easy in places you don't want them, and they come up, and so that's usually considered a weed. But there are some weeds that are maybe more environmentally harmful to the environment and have issues like that, and those are often classified as noxious weeds. Often noxious weeds are weeds that have come in from other areas that aren't native to our area, and so there's not some good ways of dealing with it in our area. With nature, it has a hard time dealing with it, and those are noxious weeds. In our typical home environment, we're not dealing necessarily with super noxious weeds, but you can be, and sometimes they're a little more difficult to deal with. Now, what is kind of like what kind of weeds do we have, and why is it there? Okay, so things that encourage weed growth. First of all, it's a plant, so it needs warm air, warm temperatures. It's warming up, weeds start to grow. You need moisture. So all plants need moisture. Once it starts to rain, once you start turning on your sprinkler system, you're going to be feeding the weeds. You're going to be watering the weeds. Sunlight. All weeds need sunlight as well, just like any other plant. So, but where do weeds excel versus other plants is often in compact soils or disturbed soils. Okay? And these compacts and disturbed soils make it harder for the desirable plants to grow. So if you have an old lawn that you've been walking on for the last 40 years, and over that time walking, it's starting to get more compact. It's starting to not have as much airflow or drainage. All of a sudden, you're making it hard for your lawn to grow, and therefore the weeds have a chance to kind of grow in that excel in that kind of condition. Or if you have a flower bed that was recently disturbed and it's kind of torn up, and the plant that was there is weakened from that disturbance, it allows weeds to kind of come in. So that's kind of typically why we get weeds, is because they excel in these areas where the desired plants don't. Okay, so that leads us to our next question, is how weedy plants spread and what makes them tough to kill. Okay, there's three ways weeds, plants in general, but weeds specifically we're talking about, spread. They spread by seed, they spread by root systems, or they spread by cuttings. Okay, so seeds. My example here is oxalis. Okay, oxalis is a nasty one. It looks like a clover, a really small clover. Oxalis is, they have their flowers are like cannons, and they just launch their seeds out, and so they spread by seeds. And so one problem that people run into often is when you go and pick it, if it's gone to flower, you go pick it, all you're doing is actually spreading the seeds around. Okay, and so knowing that may determine how we want to treat it. Okay, another way that seeds spread is by roots. My example here is morning glory. Okay, morning glory, it has really extensive root systems, and so it's kind of like Hydra. You kill the top, but it doesn't kill the roots. And so when you kill the top, it sends out more and it kind of mats in and it kind of causes problems. So obviously these ones have, like, knowing that may help to, again, determine how we treat it. The last way plants can spread is by cuttings. So I'm going to use morning glory as another example. Let's say you're like, oh, I'm just going to get this morning glory. You take a shovel to it, you start digging it, you start hacking at it, okay? Every time you cut it, and you cut all these little pieces, and if you don't remove those little pieces, you end up just spreading it, because those little roots that you cut up then can just start growing again. Okay, also with things kind of like dandelions is a really common one. When they're really small, you usually can get that whole root out. But if you let it get big and it gets that really big taproot, even though you cut it, that taproot, it can come back from that cutting, that part that you missed in the ground, potentially, is kind of another, it's a little different than cuttings, but kind of the same idea. But that is something that you need to be aware of. So when you come in and you need help figuring out what your weed is, like the first thing we're going to ask, do you know what it is? What are you dealing with? And that will help us inform us how we can help you pick the right way of controlling it. Now, how do you control? That's our next question. How do you control weeds? There is obviously a lot of people first go to herbicides. Okay, herbicides are easy to get. They are a quick solution in some cases, but sometimes it's not the best solution. And we'll go over that here. So there's actually kind of three options for controlling weeds. One is preventative or kind of cultural control. What that is making the environment not susceptible, as appealing for things like weeds. So what we talked about, what do they like? Often they like hard soils, compact soils, things like that. So if you have a flower bed and you maintain a healthy environment in your soil, hopefully that will help your good plants outcompete the bad plants. Okay, if you do things like if you put on a compost or a mulch, things like that will also help mitigate some of those issues. So why do a mulch work? Like I said, what do plants need? They need sun, or light, they need water, and they need warmth. Okay, summer's coming, we're gonna get warmth no matter what. Okay, water, spring is coming, it's gonna rain no matter what. We're gonna turn on our sprinkler system to keep alive things. We can't really do much about those. Okay, you could maybe try to be more targeted with your water so it doesn't water areas that get a lot of weeds if you don't have other plants there. So you could kind of do water, but what can we control? We can control the sunlight. We can prevent those weeds getting the sun. And that's where a mulch comes in. But you have to put it on thick enough to prevent those weeds from growing, which is at least 2 to 3 inches depth. So if you put it anything less than 2 inches, it's just decorative. You're not going to get the benefits as far as weed prevention with that mulch. So environment, doing things that help control the environment to help minimize the potential things for weeds. The next section, the next way we can control weeds is mechanically. So that is physically pulling them out of the ground, physically hoeing them, using tools or things like that to get them out. Now, a lot of people are like, oh, that is too much work. I can't do that. But hear me out. So sometimes if you pulling can be better than weed control, because pulling is an instant kill. It is an instant removal, okay? So if it spreads by seeds and it's going to seed soon, a chemical may not kill it quick enough to prevent it from going to seed, causing more problems down the road. So pulling it might be the solution to quickly remove it out of the ground, throw it in a trash can so you don't get those weeds. Okay, for our example earlier, oxalis. Oxalis is a really common problem I see around here. I have it all over my yard. I pull it, but I try to pull it before it goes to flower. But sometimes if it has already gone to flower, because of that cannon that kind of launches seeds around, if I walk on it or spray it or do things like that, often it causes the seeds to spread, and then I just have a bigger problem. So I will actually take like a trash bag, and I will put it around it and pull it, and then throw it directly into the trash can to try to keep those seeds from spreading. Because the name of the game is to limit that seed population for plants that spread by seed so that they don't get it, so that they don't keep spreading and keep having a problem year after year after year. Work through that seed population. But so hand pulling has its place. Obviously, it's going to be easier to pull when plants are younger because they don't have that extensive root system. It's going to be easier to get them out. Now, the last option is chemical. Chemical control is great, and it has its limitations. One limitation is it kills your beneficial plants as well. So you can't get in if you have a lot of existing plants. It's going to be hard to kill just the weed without harming the other plant. Okay. Other restrictions are broadleaf weeds versus grass weeds. Okay. Another terminology is dicot and monocot. So how a lot of the broad spectrum, or the selective herbicides that only kill weeds in your lawn, they work because they only target broadleaf weeds that are dicots. Okay. And it affects them personally, but it doesn't affect how monocots grow. And so it won't kill your lawn. But if you have lawny grass weeds in your lawn, then that doesn't work. Okay. But if you're trying to kill broadleaf weeds among your flowers are dicots as well. And so it could affect both. So there are some limitations, and that's where controlling things early can help. Now, there are some herbicides that we call pre-emergents. Pre-emergents are things that don't kill living weeds, living plants, but it prevents or interrupts the germination process of the weed germinating. Okay, so weeds that spread by seed, you can try to prevent them from growing with a pre-emergent. But things like, but plants similar to morning glory that spread by roots, or perennial grasses that spread by roots, sometimes these pre-emergents aren't as effective because they already have an established root system, and so they're growing. So they also have their limitations. So kind of doing the environmental, cultural, also doing the mechanical as well as herbicide or chemical control, kind of doing a combination of three will hopefully give you better results. Again, too many weeds to kind of go over in this session, but come on over and we can help you with that. My last question I have that I often get is, why are my weeds not dying? Okay, I get people that come in all the time and are like, I sprayed it with glyphosate. Okay, I sprayed it with this chemical, but my weeds aren't dying. Okay, you have to understand but it's good to understand that these chemicals kill the plant by interrupting their growth cycle. Sometimes it makes them grow so fast that they die. Some of them interrupt their cycle, and so they just can't do photosynthesis well, or some kind of metabolism in their system, and it causes them to die. So there's a lot of different ways these chemicals die. Now, sometimes a slow kill is important. Things kind of like morning glory that have these extensive root system. If you say, oh, I'm just going to double up on my glyphosate and just kill it really fast, yes, you might kill the top really fast, but what you've done is you've killed it so fast that it doesn't have the time to pull the chemical down into that root system. Okay, so sometimes a slow kill is good, but there are potentially other reasons why things don't die. If you could hand me those two, yep. we have spreader sticker and herbicide enhancer. Now, chemicals, spreader sticker makes things stick to leaves. So a lot of weeds have like little hairs or they're waxy. And so the chemical doesn't actually stay on the leaves, or they kind of get balled up on the top of the little hairs and don't get up against the actual stem. And so they don't absorb the chemical. So adding a spreader sticker, or a surfactant is another name for it, can help it stick and get down into the crevices of the plants, into the stomatas, so that it better absorbs that chemical, so hopefully giving you a better control. Now, we also have something called herbicide enhancer here at Glover Nursery. Now, this is a surfactant similar to the spreader sticker, spreader sticker, but it also has other things that help with to make it more effective. One of those is it neutralizes our hard water. Hard water, since we have hard water in Utah, it has a positive charge. A lot of our herbicides, most herbicides have a negative charge. So when you put it in the water, it binds up that chemical. And so when you spray it on the plant, instead of absorbing into the plant, it's already bound up in the hard water, the calcium and the magnesium in your water, preventing it getting sucked into the plant. So something like herbicide enhancer, if you fill it up, you add this before you add the chemical, you mix that in, that will then neutralize, or this will pre-bind to that hard water, okay, allowing it, when you mix in the chemical, allowing that chemical to be more effective, okay, allowing it to kind of stick on things and things like that. So these are really good options. I also wanted to, let me go, okay. Okay, one of the last things I want to talk about is Market Blue. Okay, this is just a dye that you can add to your chemicals. So if you have plants in a flower bed and it's too many to pull by hand, but you think you can kind of get around it, but you're afraid that you might spray your desirable plants, there's always going to be a risk if you do this, but one way to kind of help minimize that risk is to dye your chemical blue. So then you know where you're spraying. Or if you're spraying a big yard or a big area and you start wondering, you're like, hey, what did I spray? This might help you know where you sprayed. Okay, now it is light sensitive, meaning that as the sun shines on it, the blue dye dissipates. So it's not like a permanent dye, but it's a way to kind of be more selective, so you can maybe kind of get in between weeds or in between desirable plants. Now, again, come talk with us. We can help you with some other solutions to kind of help. But like I said, weeds are hard. If they're already mixed in with if you have weeds mixed in your junipers, if your junipers are really thick, there's no chemical option to treat it. You could hand pull it and then maybe try a pre-emergent that won't harm the existing plant, but will hopefully keep new weeds from growing. But if it's growing from a root system, those pre-emergents sometimes are debatable whether they work or not. But so that's kind of what I have for you. Chemicals are chemicals, so be safe. Always read the label. The label is law. Wear your PPE, your personal protective equipment, long sleeves, gloves, things like that, it never hurts to be a little more overly cautious, to be safe when you're dealing with chemicals. But if you have any further questions, come chat with me. Again, my name is Todd Schweeter. I'm here with Glover Nursery.